chat do something. All right, so welcome everyone. As just before we start, we are recording this session. It will be publicly available. If you do not want to be in the recording, please turn your camera off. It will be available in the YouTube channel. There's a research transparency playlist, so you can find all the other sessions that we have already done and the ones that we will continue to do so. So before introducing our speaker today, I'm going to introduce myself. So I am Liz Guzman-Ramirez, and I am the research steward of RSM and ESE. And so today, all this campaign has been organized together with Antonio Schettino from the Erasmus Research Services and Smuteleni Nadim from the library. She's a project manager from the University Library. Also, if you are interested in open science practices, please consider joining the Open Science Community Rotterdam, where researchers and support staff help each other in learning, discussing, and adopting open science practices. Muteleni has put the link in the chat, so please join if you're interested. And we welcome your questions in the chat, or please feel free to raise your hand. This is a bit more of a hands-on session, so I think the moment you have a question, just raise your hand and I'll give the floor to you, or I'll let Antonio know that someone has a question. I wanted to send you a photo, but I cannot. I'll send it later. For this session, we actually have a gift for the participants. So for every people presenting, we bought magnifying glasses as referring to being transparent. And so for this session, everyone that ends up doing a pre-registration, we will do a raffle and we will find a winner and we'll send you a magnifying glass as well. And the photo, I'll try to put it in the chat so that you can see how it does look.
Don't worry, I have it. I'll show it later.
Can you put it? Oh, you
I'll
have
show
it
it later.
Yeah. Perfect. Okay, you will see that there. All right, so let me introduce to you the speaker. So Antonio Schettino is the coordinator of open science from the research services, Erasmus Research Services. He has a lot of experience on pre-registration, and he actually helps researchers from the whole university to do pre-registration. That's why we're gonna have this session today. So he's gonna tell us how to pre-register your research using the open science framework. So Antonio, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So let me switch to my slides. And thanks for a nice introduction, and thanks for the organizers for inviting me. Sorry, I had to say it. Okay, so I'd like to talk about quite a few things today, so it's better if we get a move on. First of all, I would like to give an idea to people who did not follow our previous sessions on pre-registration, what actually pre-registration is. Pre-registration is a document that specifies some aspects of the research design and with the analysis plan before the project starts. This document is uploaded on dedicated repositories, and it is made public either immediately or after an embargo period. So here there is a graph that shows how on one of these platforms, on one of these pre-registration platforms, the Open Science Framework that we'll see today, the number of pre-registrations grew exponentially from 2012 when the platform started adopting it up until 2019. So now I think I would say we have around 40,000 pre-registrations. Why would anyone would even want to do pre-registration? Well, let's say on a more general level, the most important thing about pre-registration is that it allows transparent communication of information that can potentially highlight some cognitive biases. For example, confirmation bias, which is like preferring information that supports what you already believe in. Motivated reasoning, so rationalizing post hoc your decisions. Hindsight bias, the I knew it all along kind of bias. Apophenia, which is identification of patterns in randomness. And researcher degrees of freedoms, this is not necessarily cognitive bias, but it's like the fact that there are many ways to analyze and interpret data. And sometimes this can lead to problems in interpret the results. More generally, pre-registration, together with other open research practices, helps calibrate confidence on the results and interpretations that you see in publications. Today, we're going to use one platform that allows you to record your pre-registrations, and it's the Open Science Framework. It is a platform, it's an online-only platform that is developed and maintained by the Center for Open Science, which is a nonprofit organization based in the US. And it's a system that helps researchers manage, document, and optionally share all aspects of the research, of your research output and the research workflow. It is free. Anyone can can sign up. It is open source, so you can check on GitHub the code that leads to this online platform. And it's discipline agnostic because it has a modular structure that does not really, that lends itself well to many different ways of doing research. If you are a PhD candidate who's part of the graduate school, the EGSH graduate school, there will be a hands-on tutorial on how to use the OSF on April the 12th. So, make sure that you register if you're interested. Now, after this very short introduction, let's go on to the hands-on session. So let's go on the Open Science Framework. If you can't see, so now I switch to the Open Science Framework page. If you don't see it, just shout. Otherwise, I assume that you see it.
We do, we see it. Yes.
Fantastic. So the first thing that you have to do, well, is to sign in. So you should already have an account. If you don't have an account, there is a sign up button here, but we assume that you already have an account. You can log in with your username and password, but also with ORCID, and there will be follow-up sessions that will show how useful it can be to sign in with ORCID. But now we sign in with username and password, and we are on the dashboard. And you will see that my dashboard is a little bit populated because I started using this in 2015, but that's not the point. The point is go on the top left corner, and then you see OSF Home. There is a little arrow. You click, and there is OSF Registries here. So you click here, and you will be redirected to the OSF Registries. Just a moment. Let me move this away. Exactly. Okay, so now you are on the OSF Registries, which is basically like a place where you can look for public registrations. So in theory, you can, if you know somebody who has a pre-registration, you can put their name here, and you will be able to find their pre-registration. But what we want to do today is to add your own pre-registration. So we say add new. And here you will have to say whether you already have content that you want to register in an existing project. This is very useful because you might already have some materials that you have uploaded on the OSF, and you want to link your pre-registration to these materials. But in this case, we don't have that, so we say no. And which type of registration would you like to create? That is that's quite an important aspect, because these are the templates that you can use. And there are many, many templates. One of them, for example, was discussed a couple of days ago, the qualitative pre-registration template. So if you are interested in pre-registering qualitative studies, you can use this template. But for now, for the sake of, demonstration, we'll just go for the OSF pre-registration template, which is most often used for quantitative research. And so we create a draft. Which should be created. Okay. Good. So, and this is the template. It's already embedded within the system. So here you can put, a metadata like title and description of your project. And then here you can click on the plus to add contributors. I don't have time to show you how to do it, but it's very simple. So you can look for people who either have an account on the OSF, or you can put the email there. Even if they don't have an account, they will receive a notification, so they can still be part of the pre-registration as authors, even if they don't have an OSF account. Then here there are the affiliated institutions. For now, you are not seeing Erasmus University, but maybe in the future it will happen. And then the part here, license, is quite important because it tells others how they can, if they can cite your work, if they can reuse your work. Very often, these for pre-registration, it's perfectly fine to have, which is supposed to be publicly available eventually anyway. It's better to go for Creative Commons licenses like CC by 4, because this is the kind of license that allows people to reuse the pre-registration. For example, like they can use it as an example in their books or in their courses, but they have to cite the source, so they cite you. And then, yeah, you can, here there is like, you can put some subjects. So for example, if it's psychology, if it's philosophy, whatever you want. And then you can add tags for enhanced discoverability. And then, assuming that you put everything, you can go to next. So what you see here, for example, is we just completed the first page, but actually it's not complete. So you can see that here the metadata tab is red. So you can't, unless you complete all the compulsory fields, you will not be able to register this template, the information in this template. But you can see that, for example, here there is an asterisk that shows that this field must be filled in. And also there's a message here that tells you this field can't be blank. Okay, then in this, in the study information, the first thing that you have to do is to put the hypothesis. And of course, it is better to have specific, concise, and testable hypothesis if you have, if this is part of your, like a research philosophy, if you will. So it's more important. It's quite important to have really specific hypothesis, because that helps you later on, because then you can go back to the pre-registration and then remind yourself what you really wanted to do. And sometimes it's not so easy. But it also helps others to better evaluate what you were thinking about. So if you go to next, then you will go to the design plan. So for a design plan here, you can put the study type, which can be an experiment, an observational study, or some other things. You can add blinding. Of course, we cannot go, like in detail into all these options, but this is just to show you that this particular template is very, very precise and very extensive. And it could be a bit daunting at first and a bit scary at first, but actually this helps you because then it really gives you quite a few interesting guidelines that you can follow. And as I said, not everything needs to be filled out, only the parts with the asterisks. What is also interesting is that here you can attach files. So imagine that in your design plan, for example, you want to add, I don't know, some materials. You can add them here, and they will be included together with the pre-registration. Another thing that maybe I should showcase is the fact that there are examples very often. So these are very simple examples, and I would recommend in your case to be more specific, but it's just to give an idea of what is expected in each compulsory section. Then we can go to next. And then there will be the sampling plan. I would say that this particular template is better used for to register projects before you start collecting data, you start creating data. If you have already collected data, there are templates that are a bit more suited for that, for secondary data analysis. But you will see them in the list that I showed you at the very beginning. Then there is, information about data collection procedures. So how you plan to collect your data, and if you have some, more detailed plans that you don't want to put in here, then you can once again upload some files. Then the sample size and why you would have, you would plan for a specific sample size. So your justification for a sample size, and which is interesting because statistical power may also be affected by that in quantitative studies. And there are some justifications of your sample size that are more acceptable than others, or let's say from a scientific point of view, they're a bit more solid than others. But the most important thing here is to provide the level of transparency that you would otherwise not have without pre-registration. And if you have, yes?
Would it be possible to zoom in a little bit because the letters is very small?
Yes.
Or enlarge them a little bit? Yeah, great. Thank you.
Okay. This is enough then.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks.
Okay. Then if we go to next, once again, some of these things are not necessary because it also depends on the study that you're planning. But it's, if you have some manipulated variables and if you have some measured variables, it's important to put everything here. And if you have, once again, a plan with respect to, like the kind of variables that you want to include, and maybe if there are some transformations, how you would transform the measures and stuff like that. And if you have maybe some code that already does it, you can put it in here, and it can be useful to others. And then you click next. Then the statistical models, as I said, for quantitative experiment quantitative studies, this is quite important. So again, it will be important to make sure that for each hypothesis that you have included at the beginning, you have a corresponding statistical test that is appropriate to test that hypothesis. And if you have scripts, you can put them here. If you have like a protocol that you will follow, you can put it here. And then, of course, the inference criteria, if you use p-values, if you use base factors, if you do model comparison, what kind of model comparison measure are you going to use, how you are going to determine, for example, outliers, because, there are many, many ways to identify outliers and to decide whether to discard them or not. If you want, in case you have missing data, will you do imputation or will you just like get rid of everything? And then, although I don't recommend it, there is a section on exploratory analysis. I don't recommend it simply because if you start thinking about ways in which you want to explore the data, maybe you are thinking about that because you already have some ideas on what to expect. So is it really exploratory, or is it something for which you have an, even if it's a vague hypothesis, but you do have a hypothesis? And then usually in the other section, people put bibliography and the reference list that they have used in the rest of the protocol. And then it's time for review. And then, of course, I will not be able to register this because I haven't put anything. But here you can have all the information that you've put there. So now let me go back to my presentation because I'm almost done. Oh, by the way, everything that I've shown, you will see it in this presentation, which will be online, obviously. So now imagine that everything is there and you just want to register. You click on the register button and then you will be told that registration cannot be modified. So you have to be sure, you have to submit. When you want to submit, you have to make sure that you know that the registration cannot be modified. Of course, some things can be changed later on, but everything will be tracked. And so you can decide. So the first thing that you have to know is that, once you click the submit button, the contributors have 48 hours to approve or to cancel the submission. And then preregistration is published, and it can either be published immediately or after an embargo. If I remember correctly, the embargo is up to 4 years, but don't quote me on that. So after all the contributors have approved, or after 48 hours have passed, after you click the submit button. Here I have 3 examples that I'm not going to go through, but in case you're interested, this is an example for, that I co-authored, just because if there are errors, I'm responsible for them as well, using the pre-registration template that I showed you today. There is another one co-authored by Tamarin De Haven, which is a qualitative pre-registration template. And then there is an open-ended pre-registration template that is basically completely open, completely up to you how you want to fill out, in case you are not satisfied with what the kind of templates that are already present there.
And Daniel, just one thing, we're not seeing the presenting mode side, so we're seeing all the slides as well. Just, thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so there is also a lot of information that I cannot go through. For example, you can update a pre-registration, as I said before. You can create a view only and possibly even anonymized link to a pre-registration in case you want to show it to reviewers or to colleagues, you can end an embargo earlier than planned. So if you say, I put like 2 years, but that's not necessary, I can lift the embargo, you can do it. And you can also withdraw preregistration. It will just be shown this preregistration has been withdrawn. There are also other useful resources. I would like to point out that the Open Science Framework has very good resources. They have guides and they have YouTube tutorials. So I really recommend checking it out. And last but not least, this is what Liz was already saying. There's going to be a raffle. So you can send us your preregistration that you put on the OSF. You can either create a new one following what you have just learned today, or you can already, you can send us a preregistration that you already created on the OSF. The preregistration can be public, can be embargoed. You don't have to, like put publicly, publicly available something that you don't want to yet. So if it's public, just send us the DOI. If it's embargoed, as I said, you can use a view-only anonymized link. If you have several preregistration, send us only one, because everybody will need to have their own chance. You can send it to info@opensciencerotterdam.com. And this is the magnifying glass we were talking about, which is incredible. I look forward to having it. So yeah, that's it for me. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Antonio. Very nice. We do have a question in the chat. I don't know if you want to ask it yourself, Wani, or do you want me to ask it?
Hi, yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Firstly, thanks, Antonio, for your presentation. I just have one question. Like, as a PhD here in ISM, I want to know: should we register? Let's say we have to register on data management plan, right? And should we also do it on, like you said, OSF?
Well, the data management plan is not really the same as a preregistration. So the data management plan is more something that is related to how you're going to, how you plan to store the data, and something that is more related to the data only, whereas the preregistration is more general. It's more about the study and whether you want to do it or not. So as far as I know, there are no strict recommendations when it comes to doing a preregistration, and I don't think there should be. But so I would say first prioritize the data management plan. That's more important. And then if you want, you can look into a preregistration, which is more about, what kind of hypothesis I want to test, what kind of, analysis plan do I want. It's something that is not really related to the data management plan.
Okay, thanks. Very clear. Thank you.
All right, great. Are there any more questions from the participants? Yeah, Judith.
Hey, Antonio. I wanted to ask if you have done your pre-registration and then you've done your research and then the article is published. Is there a way to add a link in OSF to that published article?
Yes. So, well, not to the published article, but to the preprint, in the sense that the way it works is that everything that is on the OSF can kind of be linked to each other. So when you have an OSF project, you can say, oh, by the way, this project is linked to this preregistration. It's linked to this preprint that is on this preprint server that is also part of the infrastructure of the OSF. For example, if you're a psychologist, PsyArchive is a good preprint server. But of course, in the OSF project, you also have a wiki part in which you can say, by the way, this paper is now published. So you can put the DOI there as a sort of, in the README.
Thanks.
Thank you. Yeah, Rob, please.
Yes, hi, Antonio. Thanks for a clear presentation as always. Do you know what is the position of funders like NWO, for example, and other funders in relation to OSF framework?
In relation to pre-registration or to the OSF?
Yeah, in relation to pre-registration, do they recommend it? Since it is a US thing, right? So it's a US backend. So how, in terms of really innovative research and pre-registering, for example, a research that could be, I don't know, relevant to patent registrations or have some strong intellectual property capital.
Right. Well, this is, yeah, okay. So let's start from the assumption that the OSF is made to facilitate public sharing. Okay, so if information is, like expected to be patented, then perhaps this is not necessarily, like the right platform. However, it also depends, right? So here the preregistration is just to, is a document that transparently shows what researchers were thinking about when they started a study. It doesn't necessarily, like reflect the, has any bearing on the results themselves. So, you can start with a plan. The plan is fantastic, but then the results are non-patentable, if you allow me this term. And so it doesn't really have, there's no consequences when it comes to that. But of course, if you put a registration on the OSF, then it is publicly available. It follows specific licenses, and so you have to follow those licenses. I also want to point out that there's another way to look at your question, which is, do funding agencies in Europe, or maybe even here in the Netherlands, consider preregistration a good thing? The answer is unequivocally yes. And I'm telling you why. Because last year, ZonMV issued, so they had like this COVID-19 special fund, and they made as part of the criteria for animal research compulsory preregistration, and for human research strongly encouraged preregistration. This was the first that I knew of.
Right.
Maybe other funding agencies will follow. I'm not sure whether this is a good or a bad thing. I think it depends, because preregistration is not for everybody, and it shouldn't be for everybody. But it's good that if that happens, there are good platforms.
Thanks.
Thank you. All right, before we finish, the question that we ask all our presenters. So, Antonio, if you had to choose one open science practice that is necessary to ensure transparency in your field, what would it be?
Yeah, of course, I completely forgot that you would ask me something like this, despite the fact that we came up together with this question. But I think something that I would really like to see more is open analysis scripts or analysis protocols. Because of course I'm very fond of open data, but I also understand that there are some limitations to that. Whereas the limitations for code are much less restrictive. So if that becomes the norm, I think we will already have like a better computational reproducibility, for example, and like together with some other ways of like sharing data maybe more responsibly, we can have like a better idea of whether a piece of information within a paper is reliable or not.
Yeah, great. Thank you so much, Antonio. If there are no further questions, I would like to close this session so I don't take more of your time. Thank you everyone for joining. Thank you, Antonio, for the great presentation. And Mutaleni will put the link in the chat for the next coming sessions. Please register if you're interested. We will be very happy to see you in the coming sessions. Thank you, everyone.